That's bad. I'd like to welcome you to visit Best 5 here. You can start your visit today.
Uriel, we should live in a visit doctor onto the neck close lodge over.
Oh, I almost did.
So we should live there, bro. Well, it should be.
Yo, watch out.
Oh, yeah, it does look like. Oh.
Actually, if you
I'm Kevin Patrol Officer.
What time is it?
11:30 at building 2, and it's like 11:16. So we head that way.
Yeah, we'll head over there in a sec. Yeah, and get some of the stuff in here. Well guys, we're going to go on tour here in about 15 minutes. So we're going to look in here in this hangar really quick. And we're going to go on tour here in 15 minutes. And so I'm going to invite you guys for the whole time we're here. So you guys feel like you're here with us. But please come out and visit the museum. And after the tour, we'll go to the main stuff we're going to see. So it might be a 3-hour long video, guys. So I hope you guys enjoy. Want to hurry get this done, guys, so we can have Arnold over there. Because the tour starts soon. You guys tune in. This is going to be a real-time experience. Stay tuned. We're going to be going on a tour here in a few minutes.
Teddy, get out from under there. Thank you. Stay on this side of the rails. You're okay. He would too. Anybody wants to climb up in a cockpit.
I know.
They just look. It's very distinctive look. Yeah, just very.
Before we leave, guys, maybe we'll come back through here before we leave today and get this a little bit more detailed. Things I missed. I don't want to miss our tour, so. I don't want to miss our tour, guys, so we're going to go head right to our tour. We'll come back through this before we leave today.
I'm going to tell you now, I never want to see a side camera do something before we get there.
I'll take them through that exhibit more. I was just in like later on.
Yeah.
Guys, we'll go through that exhibit a little bit more after the tour, after we tour stuff back here. We'll go through that again and get the stuff that I missed. I don't want to miss our tour here. Stay tuned, guys. In a few minutes, we're going to be going in our tour. Building 2. Where does it say it starts at? We'll go through there a little bit later on.
Attention visitors, if you need assistance or have a question, please stop at the information desk located in each building. Maps and directional signs are in orange and blue above doorways as you enter or leave the building. The launch pad shop and snack above the missile gallery is open until 4:30 p.m. Museum exit doors are located in the museum atrium at the end of the museum store. For your convenience,
So while we're waiting for our tour, guys, I'll just come around here for a sec.
in the museum gift shop.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to the National Museum of the United States Air Force. We invite you to join a free guided tour of the Korea Gallery, which features the first jet-to-jet combat fighter, and the Southeast Asia Gallery, which is home to the Stratofortress, the B-52 bomber. This tour also includes the newest aircraft to join the Air Force family, both manned and unmanned. Please join the tour at the information desk located at the entrance to Building 2 by 11:30 a.m. Please note, museum visitors, this will be the only free guided tour of the Korea and Southeast Asia galleries offered today.
So you guys are going to be learning about South Korea and all that stuff today. So once the tour gets started, what time does it start? Like in a few minutes?
We're supposed to start 11:30, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the National Museum of the United States Air Force. My name is John Rossbach. I'm one of the many volunteers here at the museum. This is the oldest and largest military aviation museum in the world. It was started in 1923. It's been at several different locations throughout its history, but it moved here in 1971 when Building 1 was built, and then we built Building 2, Building 3, the Missile Gallery, and Building 4, which opened in 2016. Before we get started, I want to just briefly mention the Air Force Museum Foundation. This is an organization that raises funds and collects donations for support of our museum. Anything that's purchased here at the museum also goes to that support. But to give you an example, Building 4 was built totally with funds raised by the foundation. There was no taxpayer funds at all used for that building. So we're very grateful to the foundation. This gallery focuses on the two combat actions after World War II during the Cold War, Korea and Southeast Asia or Vietnam. Before we get to those, you see we have this big open area. We have events here, as you can see. But around this area, we have a selection of airplanes that show the progress of technology. Now this plane over here, this is a modified Wright Flyer. This plane is based on the early Wright planes, the same kind of airframe, but there are some differences. That plane has an 8-cylinder engine instead of a 4-cylinder engine. It uses a yoke control system, and the early Wright planes used a system called wing warping, where the wing was twisted, but that does not use wing warping. That actually uses ailerons, which is the way planes, what planes use today. That was in 1911, and that represents the 4th and 5th airplane that the U.S. Army purchased. Coming around here, this is a T-28. This is a training plane, but during Vietnam, some of these were converted to fighter bombers and supplied to the South Vietnamese Air Force, but it's primarily a trainer. This is called the Reaper. It is succeeded the Predator. It is an unmanned aircraft flown by 2 pilots on the ground. It has 2 purposes. It can do reconnaissance. It does have a camera here. And it can also do close air ground support. So it has these weapons that can be used for close air ground support. Predator is the same thing, but smaller. And the Reaper has a much more powerful engine. It's about 3 times faster than a Predator, and it also can carry more armaments. So reconnaissance and close air ground support. And then we have another unmanned aircraft. This is called a Global Hawk. It is reconnaissance. It flies very high, so that's why it has a very long wingspan, because the higher you get up in the air, the thinner the air gets, and so you need more wing to provide the lift. This flies very high so that it can't be shot down, and it can loiter over the area for very long periods of time, close to 24 hours. Unlike the Reaper, it is totally autonomous. It is not flown from the ground. It is totally programmed. It takes off, it flies through the area, it collects its reconnaissance and comes back home and lands all by itself. It can also transmit the reconnaissance data by a satellite link, so it's near-time reconnaissance information. So that's the Global Hawk. This plane that's hanging from the ceiling, this is called the Bird of Prey. It is a early stealth demonstration aircraft. You'll notice it doesn't have a tail. Most airplanes have a tail, but a tail makes it stick out on radar, so it has other control surfaces so it doesn't have that tail to be spotted by radar. It's called the Bird of Prey after the Star Trek TV series. The Klingons had a spaceship they called the Bird of Prey, which looks similar to it, so that's why they named it the Bird of Prey. On the floor you have the F-22 Raptor. That's one of the newest fighter planes in the inventory. It is stealthy, virtually invisible on radar. It can fly at what is called super cruise. It can fly at supersonic speeds for long periods of time. The weapons, if they're not being used, those compartments would actually be closed, because having them open would give it away on radar. So they get very close to the target. When they're ready to fire, then they're opened up and fired. It has an advanced targeting system. It can actually fire its weapons with the enemy not even in sight. So very advanced. It also has a system called vectored thrust. The exhaust can be angled, giving it more maneuverability. So the F-22 and the F-35 are two of the newest aircraft fighter jets in the inventory. So we're going to focus on the two conflicts. The first was in Korea. During World War II, the Japanese controlled Korea. After World War II, it was given over to the Allies. A communist government was set up in North Korea, and a democratic government set up in South Korea. The dividing line between those two countries is at the 38th parallel. In 1950, forces from the north crossed and attacked forces in the south. They pushed the forces all the way down to the tip of the peninsula. The United Nations was formed in 1945, and so the U.S. went to the United Nations. A resolution was passed, and the United States and I think 15 other countries joined in an military effort to push the North Koreans back into North Korea. So they were pushed back in, they counterattacked, they came back down, we counterattacked, we pushed it back up. For most of the conflict, it was stalemated at the 38th parallel. During both World Wars, the Air Force was part of the Army, but in 1947, it became a separate branch of the military. So Korea was its first test in terms of combat. The fighting in Korea was very different, especially from the European theater during World War II. Korea is a very rugged country. It's more agrarian, so there are not as many cities. All the major supplies were supplied by the Soviet Union, so there was not a lot of manufacturing. And Korea can get very cold and very hot, so it can be really difficult. The main difference between World War II and Korea was the use of jet aircraft, especially as fighters. During World War II, the Germans made the first jet fighter, the ME-262. But in Korea, both sides had jet aircraft, especially as fighters. This is an F-80. During both World Wars, the fighter planes were designated with a P for pursuit. But after World War II, that was changed to F for fighter. So this is an F-80. This was one of the first fighters built in quantity and used in the first part of the Korean conflict. Major difference between jets and propeller aircraft. Propeller aircraft, that propeller is like a fan, and it sweeps all the debris behind the plane. But a jet plane is pulling in air. It's like a vacuum. So with the jet plane, you have to be very careful with what's called FOD, foreign object debris. If that engine picks up like a bolt, discarded bolt, or anything like that, it can go through the engine and destroy the engine. So you have to be very careful of that. On an aircraft carrier, the sailors actually form an entire line across the flight deck, and the whole line walks and looks for FOD. Of course, the main difference in terms of dogfighting is the speed. Jets are very much faster than the propeller fighters, and so the pace of dogfights is very much speeded up. Now around the corner here, we do have a fighter. This is the F-82 twin Mustang. This was the last propeller fighter used in quantity by the Air Force. This was used in Korea. It's painted black because it would go on night raids. This plane, since it had two pilots, could go on longer missions because the pilots could trade off flying it. In a combat situation, one pilot flew the plane, the other pilot concentrated on the weapons and defending the plane. It could carry more load, more ammunition, and more weapons than the other fighter planes of World War II. But it was the last propeller-driven fighter. Since it was the North attacking the South, there was a flow of supplies running north to south. And so there were what were called interdiction missions to try to slow down or stop that supply. But that was constant throughout the conflict. But as I said, jet planes, jet fighters were used. Now this is a MiG-15. This is a Russian fighter. Very fast, very agile, packed a lot of punch with its weapons. It has swept back wings. That's what gives it more speed. When this first came on the scene, this was a very potent weapon. And so to combat this plane, we built this plane. This is the F-86 Sabre. Similar in design, swept back wings, about the same size. This has 6 machine guns in the nose. So this plane was built to fight this plane. I'm sorry?
The MiG-15 come out first or the...
Yeah, the MiG-15 came out first, and then we built that plane to fight that. So yes, the MiG-15 came out first. The F-86 was built by North American. North American built the P-51 during World War II, which was the preeminent fighter of World War II. Now most of the dogfighting took place in an area called Mig Alley. Mig Alley was close to the 38th parallel. The North Korean planes tended to stay up north. They didn't go very far south because if they got into trouble, they could get back to base quicker. So that Mig Alley was that area around the 38th parallel. Now, this plane here, you see we have a life-size picture of the pilot. The way we got this plane is he defected. He flew to an American base, he landed, and he turned the plane over to us. That's how we got that plane. He didn't know it. There was a $100,000 reward for a MiG-15, so he got $100,000. He became a U.S. citizen, he changed his name, and lived out the rest of his life as a U.S. citizen. I think he was a university professor. That's him, that's a life-size picture, and here are some of his effects, including the photostat of that check that you see.
He's a Russian? Russian, the one fighter MiG-15 come over?
That's the way we got this plane. He actually flew it.
So that guy is a Russian nationality, is it Russian?
He was North Korean.
North Korean?
Yeah, he was not Russian, he was North Korean.
Because I heard the Russian Air Force actually fly those planes too at that time.
Well, there were some Russian pilots, but there were more North Korean pilots. Russia was more providing the airplanes as opposed to pilots. So it was normally North Koreans that were flying the Russian planes. So we developed other fighters. This is an F-94, another Lockheed product. Black nose means it has radar. It has machine guns in the nose. This plane also was one of the first that has what's called an afterburner. Spent fuel is dumped into the hot exhaust and burned again for bursts of speed. So that's an early fighter with radar and an afterburner. This is another fighter. This is the F-84. The earlier versions were straight wings, but the later versions were swept back wings. but the same airframe. This particular fighter is named the Four Queens. The Four Queens were the pilot's wife and 3 daughters, so he named it after them. The multicolored nose and tail, he commanded more than one squadron. So those colors represent the different squadrons that he commanded. So that's the Four Queens. Now this plane is painted black. This would do night raids, and it would do raids on that supply train running north to south. This is a B-26. Now, when it first came out, they called it an A-26. The reason being, at that time, Congress wouldn't let us build any more bombers. So they called it an A-26 attack plane instead of a bomber. But they eventually changed it to a B-26. And that created a little bit of a problem, because during World War II, there was also a plane called a B-26. It looks similar to this, but it was a different airplane built by a different company. So now we have a World War II B-26 and a Korea Southeast Asia B-26, this plane. There were a number of innovations in Korea. This is a Jeep equipped with radios. Unfortunately, at this time, everybody had different radios. The Army had different radios than the Air Force. And so this Jeep had all the radios, so it could talk to planes, it could talk to ground troops, it could talk to headquarters locations, talk to everybody. And it was a Jeep, so it was mobile, of course. Now this plane here is called a T-6. T stands for trainer. This was used in a mission developed in Korea called the forward air controller. A forward air controller would fly this type of plane and look for and identify targets. Now this was very dangerous. The trainer plane is propeller driven, much slower than any jet. It is unarmed. Those are not weapons, those are smoke rockets. Those were used to designate the targets. So the forward air controller was flying this very slow, unarmed plane. Very dangerous mission, but very important. Now this plane up on the stands is a B-45 Tornado, also built by North American. This was one of the first jet engine bombers, and multi-jet engine bombers. There was also a reconnaissance version. When the Strategic Air Command was formed, they used this plane as what they called a medium bomber in the early days of the Strategic Air Command, or SAC. Over here we have a fuselage of a B-29. B-29 was developed in the latter half of World War II. It was B-29s that dropped the 2 atomic bombs that ended World War II. They were also used in Korea. The B-29 was the first pressurized bomber. If you see footage of the older bombers, they're wearing oxygen masks above 10,000 feet. But this is like a modern plane, you didn't have to mess with oxygen masks. So this is the fuselage, and this is the bomb bay right in front of us. You'll notice along the top of the bomb bay is a tube. That's how you got from the front to the back. You had to crawl through that tube because the bomb bay was not pressurized. There was no need to pressurize it. So that's how you got to the rear compartment, by crawling through that tube. Another innovation of Korea was the use of helicopters. Helicopters were in development in World War II, but they were still in development. They really weren't used in World War II. But in the Korean conflict, they were used extensively. This is called a dragonfly. Dragonfly was used for many uses, but it was also used as a medevac. It could pick up wounded soldiers and take them to medical attention to improve the survival rate. This is a very small helicopter, so the wounded were on stretchers outside of the cabin, and then they put plexiglass shields. You've probably seen in an episode or two of MASH, they did the same thing with a different helicopter. but the wounded were actually outside the helicopter covered with these plexiglass shields. But then we developed, this is called the Chickasaw, this helicopter here. Much bigger than the Dragonfly. The pilots are up here, and it has a cabin, so no more putting the wounded outside the cabin on stretchers. It has a winch on the other side, so it can lift up a person without landing. And it has incredible lifting power. This helicopter could actually carry a jeep or a small artillery piece on a swing beneath the helicopter. Dragonfly didn't have that kind of lifting power. So it was a big step up in terms of helicopters. Now this is a rescue boat. It started out, it was slung underneath an airplane. If there was a crew that was in the water, they'd fly over, they would drop this boat. Those fins on the front made sure that when it hit the water, it stayed upright, it didn't capsize. The crews would get on board, they could set up a shelter against the elements. It had water, it had food, it had radio, and an engine. So that was used as a rescue boat, which started out slung underneath an airplane, and they would fly over and ride. This B-29 is called an ace. If you shoot down 5 enemy planes, you're considered an ace. So this bomber and his crew shot down 5 enemy planes, which is very rare for a bomber to do. But they managed to do it so that that bomber and the crew are considered ace. The motto of this museum is we are keepers of their stories. We have airplanes here, but we never want to forget people flew those airplanes. This area here is dedicated to 4 pilots who received the Medal of Valor. All of them received that after their deaths. So they all made the ultimate sacrifice. So these are 4 stories of incredible acts of courage, and they gave the ultimate sacrifice during the Korean conflict. This huge plane over here is a cargo plane, the C-124 Globemaster. There were cargo planes in World War II, but they were much smaller than this. They had a large cargo door on the side of the fuselage, which made it difficult to load and unload, especially vehicles. This has these clamshell doors that open up in the front. Ramps are set up, vehicles can be driven on and off, or palletized loads are quickly loaded or unloaded. In the tail, there's a platform that can be dropped to the ground, and that can be loaded up with cargo, and then it's pulled into the plane. So this has tremendous cargo capability. And it could carry a lot of soldiers or wounded. You could actually set up 2 separate decks, so it could carry far more many soldiers or wounded than those smaller cargo planes of World War II. These were not pressurized, which meant they had to fly in the more turbulent air. And sometimes that ride could be pretty bumpy. So these planes were all often called old shaky, because sometimes that ride can get pretty bumpy. But still, quantum leap in terms of cargo capability and use throughout the Korean conflict and into the Vietnam conflict. No, they didn't use that for paratroopers. They used smaller planes and C-130 smaller planes. So this was really just to transport either soldiers or cargo supplies. It's just so big that it really wasn't set up for paratroopers. Okay, so this fighting started in 1950. 1953, there was an armistice declared, so the fighting stopped. However, the issue was never solved by treaty. So at the 38th parallel, we created what's called the DMZ, the Demilitarized Zone. This is a buffer land, no man's land. There are forces amassed on each side of that line, and it's still the same way now as it was in 1953. That hasn't been resolved. So the next conflict we want to talk about is Southeast Asia, or the Vietnam conflict. Like Korea, the Japanese controlled this area during World War II. Before the war, it was called French Indochina, so the French controlled that area. After World War II, the French came back in, but in 1954, they were defeated and they pulled out. So a rebel group called the Viet Cong was formed to try to fight for independence. They joined with the North Vietnam regulars, and they attacked from the north into the south of Vietnam. Now, unlike Korea, when the conflicts first started, we did not enter the conflict. The only thing we did was we sent advisors to South Vietnam to act as advisors as a defensive operation. But in 1964, that all changed. 1964, a North Vietnamese ship attacked a U.S. Navy ship. This was in the Gulf of Tonkin, which is the Gulf right off the coast of Vietnam. The U.S. Congress passed a resolution, and that gave the president power to do whatever he saw fit to stop this flow of communism. So at that point, we did start supplying troops and materiel, and that ramped up through the course of the war. This was the longest war we fought. It was longer than either of the world wars, and became to be a very divisive war. But the same kind of thing. Since it was the North attacking the South, you had a flow of supplies along what was called the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So again, there were missions to try to stop or at least slow down that supplies that were constantly going north to south. This is an A-1. It started out as a Navy plane, but the Air Force did use it in addition to the Navy. All of our planes have stories. The stories of this plane, it was flown by a man named Fisher. He was on a mission. His wingman was shot down and crashed, but he survived the crash. You saw him leave the wreckage. Now the procedure was, if you were shot down, you reported it, and then you went back to base, and they mounted a rescue effort. But the enemy was right there, and he knew if he did that the man would become a prisoner of war. The prisoners of war in Vietnam were treated brutally. You didn't want to be a prisoner of war, and Fisher didn't want that to happen to his wingman. So, in this plane, under fire, he landed, avoiding the wreckage of his wingman's plane. He turned it around. The pilots sit next to each other, not in tandem. He knew the guy was hiding nearby, so he turned the plane around. He opened up that canopy, waved the guy scrambled out of his hiding place, got in the plane, he took off, avoiding the wreckage, again under fire, and saved him from becoming a prisoner of war. Now that was not the procedure. So initially there were thoughts of court-martialing him because he didn't follow the rules, he didn't follow the procedure. They decided not to do that. He actually received the Medal of Valor, but he did that in this plane, saving his wingman from becoming a prisoner of war. This is the B-52 Stratofortress. This was designed and built in the late 50s. Its first mission was for the Strategic Air Command as a nuclear deterrent, but it could drop conventional bombs in addition to nuclear bombs. The B-52 was used extensively in the Vietnam conflict. This particular B-52 as you can see from this placard, was heavily damaged during the mission. You can see the areas and the extent of the damage, but it did get back to base and did survive that attack. But the B-52, we're still using them. Very versatile plane. They're projected to be flying still in 2040. So anyone that flies this plane in terms of the airframe is much, much younger than the airplane that he's flying, because it's the same airframe that came out in the late 50s. Now it has different engines and different electronics, but the airframe is the same. In addition to the bomb bay, you can see it can carry more bombs on wing points, so it can carry a great deal of bombs. Now this is an F-100. This is one of the first supersonic jet fighters. This plane was also built by North America. So this is one of the first supersonic jet fighters. There were forward air controllers in Vietnam, and most of them, like in Korea, used slower propeller-driven planes. But there was a group, their call sign was Misty, and they actually used this F-100. In fact, this very plane was used by the Misties. So they had a little different mission because they were in a jet fighter.
Why is it supersonic?
Supersonic means it goes faster than the speed of sound. The speed of sound is about 767 miles an hour. So if you go faster than that, it's supersonic. Now this is a McDonnell Douglas product. This is a F-101. But this particular plane is used as a reconnaissance plane. The nomenclature for naming the airplanes, you'll have a letter which is the function. F stands for fighter, B stands for bomber, C stands for cargo, T stands for trainer, and so on. But this is an RF-101 because they used an F-101 airframe, but they're not using it as a fighter. You can see the cameras in the nose. It's a reconnaissance. So the R stands for reconnaissance, but it's still using the F-101 airframe. Most of the prisoners in Vietnam were air crews that were shot down. There was very little large infantry engagements, so most of the prisoners were shot down air crews. This is an anti-aircraft gun the North Vietnamese used to shoot down our planes. Still under the B-52, it has this outrigger landing gear to hold up the wings. It has 8 engines. Very powerful airplane. Now this is a medium bomber that was used in the early part of the Vietnam conflict. It's much smaller than the B-52, much smaller bomb load, but it was used in the open parts of the conflict. Now we go back to our forward air controllers. Most forward air controllers first flew the O-1. Like the T-6, it was propeller-driven, slow, and it was non-armed. Again, those are smoke rockets. So there's back to that. Most of the forward air controllers were flying back to that. Then they went to the O-2. Now the O-2 is a little bit better. It has 2 engines, one on the nose, one pusher prop. It's more sturdy, it's faster. It does have weapons. Those are rocket launchers on the plane in addition to the smoke rockets. So that was a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little more rugged plane. And then we have this plane, the OB-10. This was used for a number of missions, but forward air controllers use this plane as well. It has a cabin in the rear. It can transport soldiers and wounded. Twin booms. This plane is what is called a turboprop. It still uses a propeller, but instead of a reciprocating engine with pistons and cylinders, it has a gas turbine engine, like a jet engine, spinning the propeller. So you get thrust from the propeller, but you also get additional thrust from that jet engine. So this is very fast, very maneuverable. It is well armed. Those are rocket launchers, those are guns. So this was a big step up for those forward air controllers. Over here, this plane on top of this stand, it's based on the T-37. The T-37 was a training plane to train pilots how to fly jets. Those training planes were called Tweets. This is an armed version of that. They called it the Super Tweet, but it is a training version that is armed, as you can see. This area back here, this is an AC-130. This is the development of what's called the gunship, which was developed in Vietnam. The gunship uses a cargo plane. All the weapons are on the left side, and what it does is it flies in circles at a general bank so that all the weapons are pointing to the center of that circle. So it's used for close air ground support. The first gunships they used C-47s, which were cargo planes from World War II. They also used C-119s that were bigger and had more weapons. And finally they used the C-130, which was bigger still and could carry a vast array of weapons. The AC-130 could actually carry a 105 millimeter artillery piece. It's actually an artillery piece in a plane. So a lot of firepower for close air ground support. Then we have our B-26, like the one over there. This is the later, again, armed to the teeth and used in Vietnam, used on a lot of those interdiction missions to try to affect the supply north to south. We started using helicopters in Korea, and that continued and expanded in North Vietnam. This is the UH-1, but it's usually known as the Huey. The Huey has gas turbine engines that are spinning the rotor instead of reciprocating engines. It's very tough, it's very rugged. It could insert and extract troops. It can be used as a medevac, and some of them are armed as gunships. But this is probably the symbol of the Vietnam conflict. You really can't talk about Vietnam without talking about the Huey. This helicopter up here, I really didn't know much about it until I came to the museum. This is called a Husky, and this is a rescue helicopter. It also was used to fight aircraft crash fires. It could dispense water or foam. It has a winch. It can bring up a person without landing. It is also gas turbine powered. It does not have a tail rotor. It has two main rotors. They are counter-rotating. One is turning like this, and one is turning like this. And that takes the place of a tail rotor. So that saved a lot of people during the conflict. Now these are actually the same helicopter. Different versions, but the same basic helicopter. This helicopter is called the Black Maria. It was used for covert operations. That's why it's painted black and it doesn't have markings on it. This is the same helicopter with a lot of enhancements. It is armored. There are gun emplacements at the front and at the tail. It can land on water in addition to landing on land. It has two gas turbine engines spinning the propeller. And these were called Jolly Green Giants. So people called them Jolly Greens. It also, if it had this probe system, it could be fueled midair. That drone would be towed behind the plane, and then they would make connection with that probe, and then they would pump fuel from the plane into the helicopter, increasing its range a great deal. So the Jolly Green was used for many purposes, but its main purpose was rescue. When a pilot went down, they would send a Jolly Green and our old friend the A1. Now this A1 is loaded. You can see, in addition to the machine guns, you can have all kinds of weapons on this plane. It is a propeller plane, but for a propeller plane, it's very fast. But since it's a propeller plane, it could stay over the area for long periods of time. The jets couldn't really stay over an area because they were moving so fast. So this could stay over the area. It's a very tough, durable plane. It could take hits from the ground, and it essentially protected the Jolly Green so the Jolly Green could rescue those downed crewmen. So that's the system they use for rescue. Now this is another cargo plane. This is a C-123. This plane was used in Operation Ranch Hand. Vietnam has a lot of jungle to it, and the enemy was very good about using that as camouflage. They are also experts in camouflage. So the Ranch Hand was using planes like this to spray defoliant to try to break down some of that jungle cover. This particular plane is called Patches because if you look at it, there are all kinds of bullet holes that were patched. So that's why they called it Patches. I learned something from one of my visitors on a tour about this plane. It started out as a glider, but then they added engines to it. A lot of planes have fuel tanks in the wings, but since this started out as a glider, it didn't have those tanks. So the fuel tanks are suspended from the wingtips. And as I was talking about this plane, one of my members of my tour group, big guy, over 6 feet tall, solid guy, big, hefty guy, he said, yeah, I worked on these planes, and since I'm kind of a big guy, I would sit on the opposite wingtip that they were fueling so the plane wouldn't tip. And I said, really? He said, yeah, I just sit there on the wingtip. And you do all kinds of things in the military. I didn't know that before. So that was something that they did with this plane. This is a C-7. This is a cargo plane. It's actually Canadian. It's a smaller cargo plane. It does have a ramp in the rear. Vehicles can be driven on and off. But it's a much smaller cargo plane. This type of plane was used a lot in Vietnam because it needed a fairly short runway. It didn't have to be a paved runway, and since it was smaller, it could get in and out of places that the bigger planes couldn't manage. This is a Russian fighter. This is a MiG-17. Looks an awful lot like the MiG-15. It's basically the MiG-15 with some improvements. This is a MiG-21. This was a very deadly fighter plane used by North Vietnam in the Vietnam conflict. Very fast, very agile, very powerful. This is an F-105 Thunder Chief, but the pilots called them Thuds. Very big plane, really not used for dogfighting, although it did have a Gatling gun in the nose. But because of its size, it was used as a bomber more than a fighter in Vietnam. You'll notice this particular plane is the Memphis Belle II. The Memphis Belle we have in World War II was a B-17 that completed 25 missions. The pilot of this plane contacted that crew and asked if he could call it the Memphis Belle II, and he used the same nose art. She wears blue on this side, she wears red on the other. And they gave permission to do that. So the Thuds, even though they were designated as fighters, were used more as bombers. Now in terms of policy, when President Johnson was president, he was very concerned about this conflict escalating to a nuclear exchange. And so he controlled the targets very, very carefully. During his administration, there were very few attacks in North Vietnam. It was mainly a defensive effort in South Vietnam. he formed what he called the Executive Committee, which was himself and his advisors. The Executive Committee had to approve any target that was attacked. The problem was there were no military people on the Executive Committee, which didn't sit well with the military. But they had the final say in what targets were attacked. So because of the Executive Committee and the fear of it escalating, very few attacks in North Vietnam were done. When President Nixon came in, he wanted to change all that. He wanted to end the war. He wanted to try to bring him to the peace table. And so he changed that policy dramatically. There was an Operation Linebacker and Linebacker 2, which used B-52s as the bombers. So a great deal of North Vietnamese targets were attacked by B-52s and other planes. Over here, this is an F5. This is very small and very economical. It's easy to maintain. It's more basic than some of the other more advanced fighters. And because it's cheaper to purchase, it's cheaper to maintain, and it's more of a simple plane. So the U.S. Air Force used F5s, but also a number of other countries. We exported that plane to a number of other countries' air forces. This plane on the stand is based on the Lockheed Constellation, which was an airliner, but it has this huge radar dome on the top. There's also one on the bottom. You get around and see that. This is an airborne command plane. I've been inside this plane. The cabin is full of radar screens, so it could track multiple targets and then vector the fighters to their targets. This is an EC-121. This particular plane is called the Triple Nickel because it's 555, but this was used as an airborne command system. See the other radar dome below. This area is dedicated to a squadron commander named Robin Olds. Robin Olds was a very famous and incredible pilot. He was an ace in World War II. He flew P-38s, P-51s, and P-57s. 47s. But he was a commander in Vietnam, and he flew the F-4. This is his plane. He was a very hands-on commander. He didn't sit in his office and send his people out. He led missions, he flew missions. He didn't do anything he wouldn't ask him to do. Very well loved and incredible commander, in addition to being an incredible pilot. His men developed what was called Operation Bolo. At this time, we were using F-105s as bombers and using F-4s as fighters. We would send both planes out, but at a certain point, the fighters had to come back, and it would just be the bombers. The enemy would wait for the fighters to come back and then send up their planes to bring down the bombers because they were doing the damage. We were bombing on such a regular schedule, the enemy could almost sit there, oh, it's time for another attack. So Operation Bolo sent fighters, no bombers, but they made the enemy think they were bombers. So they sent up all their fighters. We wiped out half their air force with that operation. Very successful. Now Olds, as you can see, usually had a very bushy mustache. According to the regulations, it couldn't go beyond the lips, and his almost always did. Like I said, this is his plane. This is an F-4 Phantom II. He called all of his planes Scat because he had a roommate in West Point that his nickname was Scat. Now he washed out because he was colorblind, couldn't be a pilot. But from then on, he named all of his planes Scat. So this is Scat 27. This is the 27th plane he flew. He actually flew this plane. The F-4 started out as a Navy plane, but the Air Force used it as well. Brute of a plane, very, very fast, and just a muscle plane. Now you notice there's a white kangaroo on the tail. This was done by Australian pilots. They would sneak in and they would paint the kangaroo as kind of a joke. Normally what you would do is paint over it. You come out and see, oh, they got me. Well, Robin Olds came out, he saw it, he said, no, I kind of like it. So he didn't paint over it. So that's why his kangaroo is still on his plane. Now this is a plane that started out as a bomber, but it was used more as a reconnaissance airplane. And this type of plane was involved, there's a movie called Bat 21 with the late Gene Hackman. He was a member of a crew on a plane like this. He was older and he had a lot of information we didn't want the enemy to get. His plane was shot down and he was the only survivor. So for a couple of weeks he had to keep from being captured by the North Vietnamese. And we had to have a way of tracking him so that we could rescue him. So they developed a system. This guy loved to golf. He was always golfing. And so he used golf courses. He'd say, I'm at the 9th hole at Hickam. And by that method, we were able to track him. Now, the enemy heard this, but they had no idea what he was talking about. And so that's how we tracked him, and he eventually was rescued. The call sign of the plane was Bat 21. And like I said, the movie is based on that. This is the F-111 Aardvark. This is a very long nose. It's a very quiet plane, so the enemy call it Whispering Death. This has variable swept wings. The wings can be swept forward for landing and taking off, giving you more lift, but in the air they're swept back for more speed. The F-14 Tomcat, the plane that's in both of the Maverick movie or Top Gun movies, also had that feature. And the B-1 bomber that we have over in Building 3 has variable swept wings. When this came out, this was a very sophisticated electronic airplane. Now, in this plane, the pilots sit next to each other, not in tandem, like the A-1. And when they eject, they don't have ejection seats. This entire section of the plane is jettisoned. In fact, over there, you can sit in the cockpit. That's what we have. We have that section that's ejected. So he never leaves his cockpit. That's ejected, parachutes come out, and that whole assembly comes down. To my knowledge, this is the only plane that does that. This is an A-7 Corsair II, which again was a Navy plane, but the Air Force used it. So this is the Air Force Museum. We have Air Force planes. If the Air Force used a Navy plane, you'll see it here. But if it was strictly a Navy plane, you won't see it here. The Navy has a museum like this in Pensacola, Florida, that has just Navy planes. We get a lot of people coming here saying, where's your Corsair? Where's your Wildcat? Where's your Tomcat? Not here. Those were famous planes. Those were famous Navy planes. I was there at the Naval Museum and I was talking to some of the docents, told them I was docent here, and I was telling him about people looking for Navy planes, and he said, yeah, we get the same thing. People come in, where's your B-52? Where's your F-16? Where's your F-15? Go to Dayton. They're not here because those are Air Force planes.
This one is the biggest one
In the world.
In the world.
Military Aviation Museum in the world. Oldest and the biggest, yes. It's much bigger than the Naval Museum. I mean, Naval Museum is really...
This one is
But it is bigger. Now we're at the back of our B-52. The first B-52s had 4 cannon in the nose or in the tail for protection. And the first ones, there was a gunner back here. As the later models came out, they eventually took out the gunner and the guns were fired from the cockpit. Now, they don't have any guns at all because they have electronic countermeasures and that are more effective than those cannon. But the original ones did have those cannon in the nose with a gunner. Yeah, the bomb bay doors open. Some of the B-52s in Vietnam, they expanded the bomb bay so they could carry more bombs. And the B-52 has an unusual landing gear system. These are called trucks. Those are steerable. So that means you can set up the wheels to line up with the runway, and in a crosswind situation, you can land that way. But that means the plane might be slanted, so you're flying like this. But the wheels are set up so when you land, you're on the runway. I talked to a pilot, and he said it's very strange flying a plane sideways, coming in for a landing. This is another F-105 Thud. This area is dedicated to a mission that was developed during Vietnam called the Wild Weasel. This is an SA-2 anti-aircraft missile, Russian anti-aircraft missile. It is radar guided. To eliminate those launchers, you have to get the enemy to turn on their radar. And the only reason they'll turn on the radar is to shoot you down. So the Wild Weasels would go in before the strike package and essentially say, come on, turn on your radars, try to shoot me down. Very dangerous job. They would go before the strike package would come in, it would leave, they would stay there, and then they would leave. So they are first one in, last one's out. Very dangerous job. If they did turn on their radars, they had special ordnance that would follow that radar beam down and destroy the launcher. Now this is their logo, Wild Weasel, and that's their mascot. This was a volunteer operation. So these pilots volunteered and they started training them. But they really weren't telling them exactly what they were doing. Finally, one of the pilots said, what are we going to be doing exactly? And they told him, those letters stand for, you've got to be shitting me. That was his reaction when he found out what he was actually going to be doing. And they incorporated it into their logo. That's what those letters mean. This area over here is dedicated to the prisoners of war of Vietnam. This is what was called the Hanoi Hilton. This is a French building that was a prison in Hanoi. We have some locked cells over there. Very primitive dirt floor. Sometimes prisoners, if they were next to each other, they'd tap on the wall with Morse code and communicate with each other. Sometimes they never met, but that's how they would communicate with each other. These are ways that they were tortured and restrained. So as I said, it was very, very difficult, brutal existence. You did not want to be a prisoner of war during Vietnam. Now in Building 4 we have a plane, it's a C-141 called the Hanoi Taxi. It is the plane that brought the first prisoners of war out of Vietnam. I encourage you to see that. There's a picture taken aboard the plane. For the first 40 minutes of the flight, total silence. Then the captain said, we've just left North Vietnamese airspace, and they all erupted into claps and applause, because at that point they knew they were safe and they were going home. One of the volunteers was patrolling that gallery. A visitor came up and pointed to the picture. See that guy there? Yeah, that's me. So the volunteer took a picture of him, pointing at the picture of himself. The Korean War was called the Forgotten War because in terms of support, nothing like the world wars. A lot of other things were going on. The baby boom was on, and so many of the public back here in the States pretty much forgot about it. The Vietnam War is called the Television War because every night on the nightly news you saw footage from Vietnam. Now in 1968 there was what was called the Tet Offensive. This was a major offensive from North Vietnam to South Vietnam, multiple targets. And in 72 there was the Easter Offensive, which was the same kind of thing. This was by far the most divisive war, also the longest we ever fought. There were...
Longer than Africa.
What?
Longer than recently ended.
Yeah, it was longer than either World War. The Korea was only 3 years.
Africa. I can't spell that name.
Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was much shorter than. See, this war was from 61 to 73. So it was a very long war. There were a lot of protests. There were men burning their draft cards. There were draft dodgers, men that went to Canada, and just a lot of upheaval. Most of the public were against the efforts. Tremendous ramp up in terms of soldiers and material. But both of these missions were given to the Air Force, and they had to fight them as best they could. So that's this building. Thanks very much for your attention. Hope you continue to enjoy your visit here at the museum. I appreciate you coming along on my tour. Thank you very much. There is a tour of Building 3 at 1:30, and then a tour of Building 4 at 3 o'clock. If you want. Tour of Building 3 is the next
Do you want to do one more tour?
Then we can see, we'll head to, may get some of the stuff we can get here. Then we'll head to Building 3 to the missile area. Guys, stay tuned here soon. We'll head to go see the missiles here soon.
Finally, after 14 hours, the last U.S. aircraft departed Ko Tang Island. The wounded were airlifted to U.S. Air Force hospitals in Thailand. Total U.S. casualties, 18 dead and 50 wounded. Additionally, 23 U.S. Air Force Security Forces personnel died in a helicopter crash due to mechanical failure in Thailand while supporting this mission.
Please like and subscribe to this video, guys, and share it. And definitely come out to the Air Force Museum here. Definitely worth it. Let me show them the stuff over here. I want to take them in there before we head on to the next exhibit. Okay. What time is it now? Okay. Comment below, guys, if you want to see the tour, even though this is not live, but it's real-time video. Comment below if we should do that tour. It's at 1 o'clock. I think it's at Hangar 3. At this moment, I got 258 minutes left on my SD card and 294 minutes on the battery, so. I'm going to show you guys this stuff over here really quick, and then we'll go into the aircraft and head on to a next hangar. I want to take you guys into the aircraft over there. That's really cool. Comment below, guys, if you like these real-time videos, tours. Now on the way out, guys, we'll go through that first exhibit that, because I didn't want us to be late to that tour, so we'll go through that on our way out. Get the guys into that. I'm going to take them in there really quick, and then we'll head right straight to Hangar 3. And then on our way back, we can...
Do you want to go to Building 1? They've got one that starts at 1 o'clock.
I want to head that way.
Theirs don't start till 1:30.
Okay. Might as well head that way, because like, but let me take the beers in here really quick. I got 253 minutes left on the card. You guys are gonna like this. I want to take you guys in here before we head on to towards Building 3. Hey guys, just spend the day with us here at the museum. Please like and subscribe.
The thingy at the front of this makes the plane look
Makes it look like it's you know the snake out vaccine Thailand?
Diamond back?
Oh yeah. What? Yeah. Yeah, it looks like whenever the snake
Do what I do and say you don't look at it, even though you really do.
So we'll do the tour at 1:30 at Building 3, guys. If you want to, let's see if we can do it. I have to keep an eye on minutes. I got 249 minutes left. Well, that's my partner, guys. Alright. I don't know where she went to. She could be down. to, guys.
Immediate highlight response. Airlift emergency supplies using the established course.
We're going to be late to the tour at 1:30.
Hello.
Hello, how are you? That's it's like right here. Oh. Come on, guys. Oh, there she is. I found her, guys. You ready, Jamie? Guess we'll head towards building 3.
The 1 o'clock one, so I can get back to my next appointment on time. Come back another day and do the 1:30 and the 3 o'clock.
What time you gotta leave?
We need to leave here about like 2:30.
Well, let's do the walk through the rest of it and then we'll leave. We don't have to worry about the air tour.
I need to go up here to the bathroom.
Okay, that's fine.
Real quick. Like super fast walking.
I'll just be recording this stuff right here. I'll wait for you, like right here. Okay? Sorry, the white balance don't look very good, guys. Trust me, in person, it looks terrible too. Like the lighting's off, so. Here she comes.
Bloodhound. Oh my god, that's creepy.
Hey, Jamie. Guys, we're just gonna walk through these hangars. I'm just gonna get what I can, and then we'll see the missiles, and we'll start heading back.
You heavy? We're gonna go look at the bottom. Yeah. You wanna walk? Okay. You gotta stick by me. You gotta stick by me then.
So guys, we're just gonna do a silk guide tour through the rest of it, and because we don't have that much time, so. Show them that's the missile in there, then we'll start heading back.
You're gonna get your medicine and that's
Never know what personal recovery is going to happen. Never know when you're going to call. We were in a constant fight for the first 6 hours.
I remember seeing the whirlpool coming through the side of the helicopter. It was like daylight on the top of the That's what we go. I think we were full before.
Well, when you guys get in the next hangar, there are 4 presidential airplanes. And you walk, have you been back there yet? Oh, okay. And you walk through all 4 of them. And the big white one is Air Force One, President Kennedy's airplane. It took his body back. So, walk on board. This is this one. You can see his buttons, you see his hat,
How are you? The good news about this next area, like, I just got to do a rotation of the missiles. They're like in a circle. When we come back, I'll get that side. Hey Jamie, I'm going to take them through hangar 4 really quick. I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough. I'll be right back. Okay. All right. Guys, I'm going to take you guys through hangar 4. Look at this, guys. Look at these missiles, guys, that they use.
Please join the tour at the information desk located at the entrance to Building 3 by 1:30. Please note, museum visitors, this will be the only free guided tour of the Cold War and missile galleries offered today.
subsonic and supersonic combat aircraft already in plan, many of them successful mission. Its mission received the speed of sound.
Ultimately, all parties were satisfied. Air Force and Air
features the largest bomber ever built and put into service by the U.S. Air Force, the SR-71, the B-2 bomber, and the Stealth aircraft. In our missile gallery, you will experience our silent signals as they aim high at over 100 feet. Please join the tour at the information desk located at the entrance to Building 3 by 1:30. Please note, museum visitors, this will be the only free guided tour of the Cold War and missile galleries offered today.
What guys?
I was in my grade.
Museum visitors, don't miss out. Attractions tickets purchased today expire today at 5 p.m. And lines for the simulators and VR may start filling up soon. Don't just outside the museum store. Thank you for visiting today.
All right, let's get a line going so I know how many. Let's get a line going here, starting with you.
Well, guys, we're going to start heading out. Hope you guys enjoyed the tour. I'm not going to end the video until I get back out to the sign outside. So, comment what your best part in the video was below.
Drag that out here. 26 is enough. This is our handiest bathroom. We look everywhere for this last week.
Look into it. It was the doctor. He was the
Ball girls.
into our Navy, and take out their fields, and then the second flight within the hour of another 170 come. And they pretty well attack all the airfields and sink or damage all 8 of our main battleships at Pearl Harbor. Now, one of the persons who was really related on that Sunday was Lieutenant Rasmussen here. He ran out into the jams. These are, in fact, the jams.
Yeah,